You're listening to Hope 104.5 and Hope in the Morning with Kurt Ward and India Kingery. Also pleased to be joined in the studio by Jacob Danieley. Welcome, Jacob.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Jacob is the pastor of Westside Fellowship. He and I worked together for, I guess, a couple of years or so before God did some amazing things and sent the four staff pastors in four different directions about 3 years ago.
Amen. Absolutely. It's awesome to see the faithfulness of God working out in our lives every day.
That's for sure. That was a crazy season, but here looking back 3 years later, we can see how God did some amazing things, as Jacob just alluded to. And Westside, I look at the calendar of Westside and I feel like, wow, nothing has changed with regard to you guys are doing a ton of events and have a lot of things scheduled for folks who call that their church home.
Indeed. We have been very, very thankful to have a lot of people involved there at Westside who just love the Lord and like being involved with various community events. Coming up, we have a couple of mission trips that we're looking at and a community event called Night to Shine that we are very, very excited about. But yes, you are correct in that our calendar stays very, very full, and so that's a wonderful thing.
As a pastor, you hit the nail on the head. As long as there's a lot of people that are doing the work in those events, everything's good.
Indeed, absolutely, and that is one thing that, you know, as a pastor at that local church, I'm very, very blessed to have a good group of people that, like I said, just love the Lord and love to serve the Lord in those capacities.
Amen to that. So Westside Fellowship is located on Highway 87 in Elon. It's right beside of Western Alamance High School. And basically, in a lot of ways, a Western Alamance community church, but then also brings people from really throughout the county and neighboring counties as well.
Yeah, you're exactly correct. We have people regularly attending Westside from all throughout Alamance County. But we are very, very thankful to be located right beside Western. The Lord has created some really awesome opportunities for us to participate in some of the things that Western does as a high school through supporting the athletic teams with meals and various opportunities for supporting the school with testing locations and things like that. So it's a really awesome opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus, even in a public school environment, if I can say that.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. And to be a good neighbor to your next door neighbor, which is the high school.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Jacob Danieley is our guest today. We'll be talking more about all the great things coming up at Westside Fellowship. He mentioned a Night to Shine. We're going to provide some details about that event. That is a prom opportunity for folks with special needs. And that's sponsored by the Tim Tebow Foundation. So we'll be chatting a little bit more about that as we go through the morning. Also, one of those mission trips he mentioned is actually one that my daughter and I are going to be going on to Guatemala. That comes up at the end of February. We'll be chatting about that as well. Lots of things to talk about this morning with Pastor Jacob from Westside Fellowship. Stay with us for that conversation. You're listening to our Friends and Family Friday segment with Pastor Jacob Danieley, pastor of Westside Fellowship. And Jacob, one of the things we like to do, and I don't necessarily say it this way a lot of times, we like to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit for folks, just kind of let them see when we got someone in here who's doing ministry full time and let them kind of get a glimpse of, hey, maybe what goes on behind the scenes of a church and things of that nature. So with that sort of in mind, and you don't have to answer the question with some hidden secret or anything, but talk a little bit about over the last 3 years with you in that role as senior pastor, what's been kind of maybe the biggest challenge that you've seen, and what's been also one of the biggest blessings, if you will, that the Lord has been able to bestow upon you and your family and your church family as well?
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking that, and you're exactly right. It's really awesome to have the opportunities to pull back the curtain, so to speak, within local church ministry, because I think a lot of people think that pastors and those who work in vocational ministry are just perfect people and never have any kinds of challenges and never have real life that takes place with real families and that we're real people. I'm going to start with the blessing part of that question. One of the most amazing things that I have seen over the last 3 years in serving as one of the pastors at Westside Fellowship is just seeing the faithfulness of God played out on a day-to-day basis. And you know, if you have a conversation with me in any kind of context, there's a good chance that at some point I will probably say something like the Lord is faithful. And the reason I say that is because over these last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, just to see, to taste and see that the Lord is good, so to speak, as Psalm 34 says, to experience that faithfulness. But likewise, the challenge aspect of that question is very closely related to the blessing. In I think the biggest challenge is remembering that God is faithful.
Right.
And I've seen that He is faithful. I know that He is faithful. I've experienced His faithfulness, tasted and seen that goodness, the goodness of God. But still, every day something will happen that just catches you off guard, and you have to stop and remember, wait a minute, the Lord truly is faithful.
So in other words, you have to actually walk out your faith, and you have to actually trust God, even in those moments where it looks like, hey, where's God in this situation?
That's exactly right. And trust is that key word, is actually trusting that God is who He says that He is, and that He is enough. He is sufficient, and I can truly trust Him in all things.
Yeah, and it's been cool to watch Him work, God work in our local churches throughout the area. And I think, for our situation at Northside Fellowship, we were able to kind of relaunch what was basically a dying church, and even to see God's faithfulness in that. In the fact that you think, okay, well, it may not, you would think it's not God's will that something be shut down that's functioning in His name. But the reality is there's different seasons for different ministries, and to be able to see Him be faithful and demonstrate His goodness in even something that may look like a closed door to others.
You're exactly right. It's really humbling to remember that each of our local churches are Jesus's church. We are all a part of the body of Christ. We are Jesus's church, and to truly live out the faith that we talk about all of the time, it means that we must take our hands off and allow the Lord to do what He wants to do. And
He's in control.
He is in control, and
that is for sure. Jacob Danieley is our guest today. He's the pastor of Westside Fellowship. Westside is located on Highway 87 in Elon, right beside of Western Alamance High School. And find them online at westsidefellowship.org.
Westsidefellowship.org.
Westsidefellowship.org if you want to know more information about the church. We'll talk about some of the events they have coming up here in just a moment. Stay tuned for that. Sanctus Real with Dare to Hope, a song that was written coming out of COVID, reminding us that we still have hope in Jesus Christ no matter what happens in this world, no matter what's going on. We can still find hope. And that's the purpose in many ways of this radio station as well, is to share that with other folks, let them know that they have hope as well.
Do you ever follow the Sanctus Real Facebook page?
I don't know that I do.
They have a Mark, who's one of the band members that we got to meet back when they were here for their concert. He does Mondays with Mark on Monday evenings, and it's really fun to follow along because he'll, talk about sometimes he talks about in their music. Sometimes he's in the grocery store. It's just it's really fun to kind of keep up with them.
Absolutely. We Jacob and I have a mutual friend and mentor that does a similar thing called Mondays with Mike here locally.
Absolutely. When you said Mondays with Mark, I was thinking, man, I feel like I've heard that before.
Absolutely, indeed. Jacob, one of the things we want to talk about is A Night to Shine. That's an event coming up at Westside Fellowship on the calendar for February 9th, I understand. Talk a little bit about this event and how Westside got involved in it as well.
Man, I can't begin to express how amazing Night to Shine is. It is an event, a prom experience for people with special needs that is established by the Tim Tebow Foundation. Westside Fellowship actually began getting involved with Night to Shine last year. One of the guys that I work with, a gentleman named Caleb Massey, he had experienced Night to Shine at a different church in Georgia when he lived in Atlanta for a little while. And when he came on staff at Westside, he just kept talking about how much he enjoyed this Night to Shine experience. So we began looking into it and realized that Night to Shine is able to be put on, hosted by a variety of local churches. So we just applied to be one of the local churches to host a Night to Shine event. And thankfully, we were allowed to do that. And I'm going to tell you what, last year, the first experience, I can't put into words. It is very difficult to put into words how encouraging that night was to see just the smiles brought to people's faces. I think one of my personal favorite things from the event was interacting with so many of the parents. We have part of the Night to Shine event is we not only host a prom experience for people with special needs, but we also create a respite kind of hospitality space for their parents to come watch the game. We have some food, some hot food. We have some drinks, some Pepsi, some Coke, some Sprite, just to relax. And I really spent a lot of time in the respite room just talking with some parents, and what an incredible opportunity to get to know people right in the midst of their daily life.
And that respite is so needed oftentimes when someone is the caregiver of a person with special needs. They don't have a lot of a break necessarily from that, and so a very important component of that Night to Shine as well. I remember hearing Tim Tebow talk about MVP and the fact that, you know, he as an athlete was kind of always charging early in his career, particularly and even into his college days, was always charging ahead to be that most valuable player. And then I think it was a mission trip to the Philippines that which he spent several times back and forth to the Philippines and continues to do ministry there today. But on one of those trips, God really rechanged or redefined MVP for him, that it became less about being the most valuable player and instead focusing on the most vulnerable people. And the most vulnerable people are the people that God wants us to pay attention to and maybe put the spotlight on and come alongside and help, not just those that are superstar athletes that are the most valuable players. And that's really what Tim Tebow did with this foundation then, was kind of put the spotlight on some folks that would be considered the most vulnerable people, including those with special needs.
Yeah, amen. I don't know personally a lot of the details about that story, but just hearing you talk about that, it ties in so clearly to what the mission of Night to Shine really is, and to be able to love people in the midst of their daily life. There is no greater experience to me than standing there and seeing the smiles on people's faces as they just have a great time.
And details on that event can be found on our All About Roofing community calendar. If you go to hope1045.com and click on the calendar link, you'll see a Night to Shine right there on Friday, February the 9th. The details are there, including, I think, the link to register to participate in it as well as you would accept some support of this as well. This is not an event that goes without needing some financial backing also.
Absolutely. We to put on any event like this, it does require financial resources, and so while we would encourage people to sign up to attend, we also accept sponsorships from any local businesses or people who believe in the mission that the Tim Tebow Foundation has put forward with Night to Shine. We are definitely open to that as well, because you are correct. In order to do an event like this and to do it well, it does require resources.
Again, details can be found at hope1045.com and click on the community calendar to find Night to Shine at Westside Fellowship. Colton Dixon reminding us of all that matters. Jacob Danieley is our guest today. He is a pastor of Westside Fellowship in Elon. And Jacob, that's one of those phrases that we can kind of cling to and say, what does matter? You know, all that matters, Colton just saying about the love of God and the fact that that certainly matters. But, you know, what's the main thing? And I know for you in your life, the main thing perhaps has changed over time. There was a time where music was the main thing, and you were pursuing a career in music. You even have some I would say hardware, if you will, with regard to some of your musical accolades. A couple of songwriter awards, a Dove Award that people may not be aware of when you were working with the Hoppers, which is a Southern gospel group. But music was very much the focus, and I don't want to say all that matters, but perhaps that was the case.
No, I think that is a completely fair thing to say. For the early part of my life, music was my life. I absolutely loved it, and in many ways, I had a lot of really great opportunities to play music. I've played a lot of music all over the world. I've traveled the country playing music. I've had the opportunity to play in 45 of the 50 states, and so it's been a lot of fun doing that. But one thing that I did learn in music was that the Lord is very clear that He desires for Him to take first place in our life, and when we place other things in the rightful position that Jesus is to occupy, sometimes life can get difficult.
Yeah,
and that was my experience.
Absolutely. He deserves to be there. He is worthy of being in first place. And we, at the same time, and I really think, I don't want to get too deep in the theology of it, but I really think part of our being created in the image of God is us thirsting after that first place as well. And so for us to be able to kind of, that's part of the need for us to die to self, and the need for us to crucify ourselves on a regular basis so that we can put Him first.
Absolutely. Going back to the Garden of Eden, that is the very thing that Adam and Eve were kind of hungering for, where they wanted to have that place that God is to rightly occupy. And so, yes, for me, in many ways, music occupied that space. And you're correct in I had some opportunities to go out and play music. And, yes, I was fortunate to win a couple of awards. I won a Dove Award in 2015 with the Hoppers, a record that I'd worked on, mixed and mastered for them. I traveled with a group called the Hoppers and had the opportunity to play music in the country music, top 40 country music for a while with an individual named John Party. And so that was a lot of fun as well. But once again, it is very interesting to me to see that when we place other things in first place, so to speak, when we give first place to things that do not belong in first place, the Lord will also use various opportunities to remind us that He deserves first place.
I asked you a moment ago off air if you were playing much music yourself, and you said no, not really.
Yeah, no, honestly, I'm not, and it's really interesting. When the Lord really began to make clear to me that He deserved first place in my life, I went through a little bit of a decluttering phase, if I can say that.
Almost a detox, I would imagine.
A detox, you're exactly right. When you're cleaning out the house, first things have to get a little messy, and then you can get rid of what doesn't belong and put other things back in place where they do belong. And so what was very interesting is a lot of the musical gear that I had, a lot of the studio equipment that I had, a lot of that stuff I actually sold, and I'm driving around in it in my truck right now. So I bought my truck with a lot of the gear, the tour equipment and things. But right now, the Lord has allowed me to enjoy music in its rightful place, and so every once in a while, I will still play music at church. Not very frequently, but every once in a while, and that's a beautiful thing to use it for what it's intended to, and that's to worship the Lord.
Jacob Danieley is our Friends and Family Friday guest today. We'll talk more with him in just a moment. First, here's Consumed by Fire. This is First Things First. You're listening to Hope 104.5. Our Friends and Family Friday guest today is Jacob Danieley, Senior Pastor of Westside Fellowship, right beside of Western Alamance High School on Highway 87 in Elon. If you have a chance and don't have a church home, I encourage you to check out the folks there at Westside Fellowship. I'm actually going to be going with a team from Westside to Guatemala a little bit later on this month at the end of February. Jacob and I went, has that been about 4 years ago, I guess?
It's been 4 years ago.
That's hard to believe. So Jacob and I were part of a team that went to the village of Los Canan. That's a mountainous village in Guatemala, and met with some of the folks there and able to do some ministry over time. Westside has continued to kind of pour into those people, and my youngest daughter, Casey, had a hunger and a desire and kind of what we felt like was a Lord's calling to go back, and so connected with you guys again and look forward to that trip coming up pretty soon.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you and Casey go along with us. And, to really be honest, we are involved in this ministry in the village because of the work that you put into making this happen years ago. So thank you for that, Kurt.
Myself and Steve Janicello went down, I guess it's been a little over 5 years ago now, and both of us were on staff at Westside at that time, and kind of toured some villages in the area and looked at what the needs were and kind of assessed whether Westside would be a good fit for getting involved in some of that from an international mission standpoint. And it's a challenge because there's so many opportunities for ministry, and to be kind of in line with what the Lord's wanting you to do can be a challenge because your resources are limited, the number of people and volunteers that you have are limited, the finances are limited, and so you got to kind of make sure that you're making wise choices. And hopefully that was a wise one to get Westside and a couple other churches as well involved in the work that we are doing in Los Canan.
That is absolutely right. And yes, from my perspective, was a very wise choice. One of the things that I really like about our involvement in Guatemala is the ministry is set up through what is called a village transformation process. And so oftentimes when a church might take a mission trip, they may go in and put boots on the ground in a village for a week or maybe 2 weeks and do some work and then leave, and there may never be any follow-up in that village. And we know very well that doing life daily in a Christian living requires follow-up, requires accountability, requires just continued hands-on loving one another. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about what is going on in Guatemala is this village transformation. And so, 4 years ago, we went on the first trip. This year, we have been every year except for COVID. That COVID year was a little bit interesting. But nevertheless, we've been every year since. And this year specifically, we're going to provide clean water sources through water filters. A couple of years ago, we were involved in providing a water source where they actually piped in water 9 miles across a very hilly terrain. But unfortunately, some bad weather, a pretty large storm came in and destroyed.
Back-to-back hurricanes.
Back-to-back hurricanes,
Yes.
You're correct, came in and destroyed the work that was done. So this year we're going, rather than piping in water and traveling 9 miles with pipes, we're actually bringing individual water filter setups for 105 families there in the village of Los Canan.
Yeah. My sister said recently, and we were talking specifically about a recovery situation, and she said recovery is not a straight line process. And when she said that, I was like, isn't that all ministry? That all ministry is not the straight line process that we think it should be. You put, like in this case, in Guatemala, you put a water source for this village, and you pipe in, and you think, okay, well, the water's taken care of. And then something comes along and changes that, and you got to go back and kind of regroup, and so that's it's hills and valleys, and it's ups and downs, and it's decisions that you've got to make to determine, okay, what is best to help these people. And to Jacob's point a minute ago, this is very much the concept of let's teach some people how to fish, figuratively speaking, instead of just giving them fish for a meal, and that's become kind of the village transformation portion of this as well.
Absolutely. One of the things that's been really awesome for me to see is some of the people at Westside who have been on this particular mission trip every year over the last 4 years have actually come in and sponsored some of the children through child sponsorship programs, some of the very children that live in that village. And so we have this opportunity to not only go into the village once a year for work efforts and bringing physical relief, but we also have this opportunity for so many of the people on our team to continue in a relationship throughout the year. And you know what is really amazing to see is when we go on this trip, being that we've gone to the same village year after year after year, we see familiar faces, we see smiling faces. We are slowly, at least I feel like we are slowly kind of becoming part of their family in many ways, because there is just the familiarity of kind of a welcome home when we show up.
And isn't that Christianity? That
Absolutely.
It's a relationship based. That it's based on us one longing for a relationship with the Lord, which is what we need, and that reconciliation with Him. But then also with other believers, and have that family feeling.
Absolutely, and we have experienced thus far. It has really allowed for more personal, more intimate conversations to take place with how the Lord is so instrumental in our daily lives. You know, when you go on any type of evangelical mission trip, you know, the goal is to go and take the gospel of Jesus to the nations. But if we can be very honest, it is much easier to receive the gospel when a bridge has been built through relationship.
Yeah, so true. The trust is there to be able to stand that weight of the truth, and the gospel is truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're talking with Jacob Danieley this morning. He is our Friends and Family Friday guest. We'll talk a little bit more about this Guatemala mission trip, and also want to introduce you to some ways in which you can help. He mentioned bringing clean water to this village. We'll chat about that here in just a moment. Stay tuned for that. First, here's Finding Favor with Shake the World. Our Friends and Family Friday guest today is Jacob Danieley of Westside Fellowship. Jacob, we were talking a minute ago about the Guatemala trip, and it's coming up. And that's a kind of a partnership you mentioned in Village Transformation from a couple of different churches. Includes a church in, I believe it's Bastion, Virginia as well. That'll be sending some folks on this trip. And one of the big focus for this particular trip is clean water, as Jacob said before. And one of the ways in which you, the Hope family, can get involved is by purchasing the water filters that will be taken and given to the villagers on this trip.
Absolutely. Any support that anyone could lend with purchasing water filters is great. We are prepared to take 115 water filters with us to Guatemala. While we are there, we will be resourcing local equipment such as buckets and things like that in order to install the water filters and teach them how to use those. But once again, as we have talked about earlier, to do any sort of missionary effort like this, it just simply takes resources. And so any way that any part of the Hope family could support in sourcing resources, that's a great thing.
And it's about $30 that the cost covers both the filter and the bucket and basically the supplies needed for that family to have a way to filter their water so that they have clean drinking water. And of course, it goes without saying, but it's probably worth mentioning, clean drinking water is so essential to the health of any family, of any person. And without that, and as Jacob mentioned before, the nearest clean water source in this mountainous village is about 9 miles away. And so water's got to be brought in, and the water that they have in the village itself is not clean, and so it has to be filtered in order to be used. Right,
you're exactly right. We often take for granted our access to clean water. Oftentimes, our difference in water is whether or not it has fluoride already entered into it, whereas in Guatemala, where we're going to Los Canan, they're not really worried about fluoride. They're more concerned with can they actually consume the water that is available. And unfortunately, for many, the answer is no, that they should not safely consume that water. And so we are encouraged to take these water filters to Los Canan to introduce them to clean drinking water provided for them in their home, so that we can also have a connection to speak about how they can get to know the source of true living water so that they will never thirst again.
Yeah, so true. To be able to open the door up for the gospel, as we've been talking about as well. The trip itself happens in late February, and looking forward, as mentioned earlier, myself and my daughter Casey will be going with the group from Westside Fellowship, and looking forward to spending the time in Guatemala with our brothers and sisters there, and with introducing others to the family of Christ as well. And so if you would like to support this, we'll share on our Facebook page, on the Hope 104.5 Facebook page, we'll share information about how you can help support this, and maybe you would want to purchase a water filter for a family there in Guatemala and make a difference in their lives by providing that clean source of water. Jacob, it's been a pleasure. You and I don't get a chance to get together as often as we probably should, or as we both would like, but it's always a joy to get together and chat a little bit.
Look, the honor has been all of mine. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Hope family, for allowing me into your home, into your car, into your wherever you are this morning. I have thoroughly enjoyed spending this time with you, so thanks, guys.
Again, Jacob Danieley is the pastor of Westside Fellowship. You can find more about that church by going to westsidefellowship.org. The church itself is located, or where it gathers for worship, is on Highway 87, just beside of Western Alamance High School. It's been a pleasure having Jacob on our show today.
I'll just remind people that, we are thankful for Jacob joining us this morning, and I've shared our photo that we usually take in front of our Hope wall here in the studio, and shared some information about some of the things that he talked about, both the Night to Shine and the water filters for the upcoming mission trip. But both of those are now on our Facebook page, so you can find out how to register for the Night to Shine, and also make a donation for the water filters.
If you know someone who is a special needs child or an adult, I don't know the age of that prom situation.
I think you have to be at least 14.
Okay.
If I remember. I remember reading a number somewhere.
Yeah. So, but details, again, are linked through the Facebook page and also on our Hope calendar about the Night to Shine event. But just a fantastic event, as Jacob shared many times. And also, if you have a heart for the least of these in terms of reaching people who are some of the poorest of the poor, I encourage you to maybe consider a contribution to the Guatemala trip, and particularly to purchasing water filters for those families in the village of Los Canon. As I said, I've been there a couple of times myself, including one previous trip with Jacob, and it is certainly great needs exist in that area of Guatemala, and we're thankful to be able to continue to show love to them and continue to find ways to meet needs, including by providing these water filters and hopefully clean drinking water that's sustainable over time as well. So I appreciate Jacob being here. Also, as you said, it was really good catching up with him and being able to share some of his story, as well as all the great things going on at Westside Fellowship there in Elam.
You are loved.